The Fuji X100 is a brilliant little camera. It performs as well as a lot of full-size cameras like a DSLR, and it's been an absolute hit with street photographers who appreciate the styling and responsiveness. They recently announced the X100S. There's a lot of reviews out saying how much better it is and how great it is of an improvement over this guy. I think that's kind of established. I'll still be testing it myself, but the two questions I want to answer today are, if you're considering buying one or the other with the big price difference now, which should you buy? And if you already own the X100, can you justify upgrading to the X100S? But cheap. So as I said, the X100 was hugely popular. It is a fantastic camera. The image performance and the 23mm lens are just great. The manual focusing wasn't fantastic on it though, and that's something a lot of people really wanted to see fixed up. And whilst these two look really close side by side, there are differences under the hood. Let's take a look around the outside first. So, can anyone tell which is which? The little S has been covered brilliantly by a pocket wizard. There's really nothing to differentiate them. They're slightly different through the eyepiece here, looking at them up close, but I don't think that I could really tell which is which just by looking at them. This is the S, this is the non-S. Let's take a tour around the rest of them and you'll see really very little has changed styling-wise, and why would you? It was such a hit. Okay, so a few little changes here. We've gotten a Q button now. RAW's been taken off there. Drive has moved from up the top to over to here. And then what was there, the autofocus, has now been moved where it was with the trash bin. But really not a lot. Still pretty much precisely the same viewfinder. The labeling has changed just a little bit. Still the same dial. They have really similar feel in terms of controls. Looking at them top down, again, really quite similar, and why change it? The labeling has changed just a little bit. Still both have the regulation hot shoe, your shutter speed, or to set yourself up to use aperture priority, exposure compensation dial. Probably the only main difference in handling is, you know, the menu system and then how the resistance on the focus ring works. Now they actually feel reasonably similar. The new S is slightly smoother despite the fact this hasn't been used very much, but the way that it lets you get through the focus range a lot quicker is what has a lot of manual focus shooters really frothing. But inside there are changes. So apart from those button layout changes, this has the new engine and it's a new XMOS Series 2 16 megapixel sensor. Now this should be sporting some astounding image quality, and it does go to a higher boost ISO setting as well. So let's do some side-by-side image tests with these guys and see how that really compares. And over the next week or so, I'll be taking these two with me and testing them out to see how I find the autofocus capabilities. So let's just fast forward that week. I'll come back with some samples and my conclusions after I've looked at them at full screen. Okay, this first shot is from the X100, and both of these were shot on the same setting, so there's no variation there. Here we are with the X100S, and it's noticeably more contrasty, especially between the blacks and whites, but the colors have a lot more punch too. There we are again on the X100, and there on the 100S. Let's take full crops. There's the X100. And there's the X100S. Bit hard to see in that kind of a way. Let's see them side by side. There we are with the X100S on the right. It does look punchier to me. Okay, next up, let's do some high ISO tests, starting out with the X100. There we are at ISO 800, jumping up to 1600 there, 3200, and here we are up at 6400. Now let's look at the same on the X100S. There at 800. We will look at these side by side at the end. There we are at 1600, 3200, and again at 6400. Now let's have a look at the two 3200 side by side. Okay, so there's not a huge difference, but if you look at the out of focus areas, there does seem to be more color noise coming up on the previous model, the X100. And here at 6400, even more so. Look at the bottom left corner and the bottom right corner. The funny texture in those fake flowers is making it, throws you off in terms of sharpness, but you can definitely see that there's more color noise coming in
on the older model. The new one has improved on it. Something else that I really noticed that was a huge issue was the autofocus speed. Let me show you some footage of that.
Okay, so I'm shooting back at the Nikon, not the most fascinating subject that there is, and then taking some shots of the tree. And, you know, I was changing between cameras as I did it, you know, just shoot, settings, shoot, and you kind of lose track of which is which because they're so similar in terms of feel. But the X100 had a lot more instances where it misfocused, probably 3, whereas X100S had none. And this hunted a lot more, probably double. So I would say the autofocus on the 100S has been significantly improved. Oh, and there's Tina, taking photos of me with her new camera. Hey, Tina, wave. Oh, I got it, but it did hunt around. That's the X100. So I'm just doing some fairly basic low light testing here to see how the two cameras perform. And I'm astounded, the old X100 is taking like 10 attempts to get in focus, just focusing in the background or not getting focus at all in this low light situation. So let's count them. That's 2. That's 3, it didn't catch it. 4, it's focused in the background. Let's try a slightly different point. 5, that time it got it, but it has taken up to 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 times to get it. And because I was going through the different ISOs to test them, that got fairly tiresome. Now let's try the X100S. Exactly the same lighting conditions. Oh, no, that got it actually. First time. Let's try it again. Interesting. It does take a little second and hunts through the whole range, but when it locks on, it got it first time. So it took a little second to get there, but it did actually get it on the first attempt. So if you're using autofocus in low light, that's a deal breaker for me. To miss focus and say it's gotten focus so many times, or to just not be able to get it with the old one, I'd rather spend the full second or so for it to beep, to get it accurately. That's it for me. Okay, I've spent a good week, 10 days with the Fuji X100 and the X100S now. I've put them through their paces, I've shot with them, you know, out on the street, at dinner parties, all of those kind of different places to really get a sense of how they perform. It's been said so many times, I feel redundant saying it, but the X100 is absolutely legendary for good reason. It was the first of something like this in the digital world. It set people on fire. I personally have friends who sold whole DSLR kits and have stuck with this. And to be honest, I think this might be the first time ever that I'm saying this about a direct replacement for another camera. If you were looking at either of these guys head to head now, taking in consideration that this one has dropped a fair bit in price and this one is quite pricey, the new X100S, I do think the improvements are worth the extra money, assuming you're not on a really tight budget. If you can get one of these cheap and that's your budget, great, go out and get it. But if you are comparing them head to head, yes, I do think the X100S is worth the extra money. And this is something I've definitely never said before about, you know, the 7100 replacing the 700 or the 5D3 replacing the 5D2. If the X100 is your primary camera, like I know it is for a lot of street photographers, you've been shooting with it like crazy for quite a while, and now this has come along and you're thinking, oh, but can I really upgrade from the 100 to the S? Are the changes that different? If it's what you're shooting with, you love shooting, you shoot a lot and you've got the money, I would say yes. The improvements, all the little bugbears this one had that held it back from being, you know, just perfect, this has pretty much nailed them. The image quality is improved over excellent. The manual focus now is excellent. The screen is better. Just everything that they needed to fix up on it, it's now better on this one, and it's really tempting. I'm not a mirrorless camera shooter, but this one, it's really, 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 really good, okay? That's as professional as opinion as you're gonna get from me. I've shot with them both a lot. This one's much better, really, really better. This one's still bloody excellent. So there's my thoughts. Leave me any questions or comments. If you had one, you're considering upgrading, anything like that, fire away with your questions. Please take a moment to subscribe, and I'll see you soon.